you hear me?
I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah, you 2020. I'll call that to order. Please note for the record that all commissioners are present, either by telephone or in person. We'll start out with the approval of the minutes. Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to take that back. I'm not sure who we have on the line today, but just some of the housekeeping things that please identify yourself prior to speaking. Please speak loudly. Please do not use the speaker function on your phone. It distorts the sound. And also please mute your phone unless you're speaking. And then once you're done speaking, if you please mute your phone again, that would be most appreciated. So the first order of business then is the approval of the minutes, and we have two sets of minutes. One is from the regular Grand Forks County Commission meeting on June 2nd, 2020, and the other one is the Grand Forks County Board of Equalization. So I'm going to ask for two separate motions, if I could, please. And the first one would be on the Grand Forks County Commission meeting of June 2nd, 2020.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. This is Cindy.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. And the next one is the Grand Forks Board of Equalization on June 2nd, 2020. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion.
Motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the order of the agenda. Are there any additions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would like to add Dean from IT right after item number 8.
Okay, so we'll add Dean Dahl then to the agenda. I write between 8 and 9 there. So do I have a second on that?
Second. Tom.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Next item is the approval of the consent agenda. And before you, or you have all received via the computer, copies of the county bills, road maintenance agreements. I think there were 40 of them this time. And is there anything that you would like to have pulled for discussion? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Is there
So moved, Tom.
Okay,
I'll second that.
we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Next item is the court administration. Are you with us?
Judge Hager is here.
Thank you, welcome.
Welcome too. Thank you.
Yes.
We can tell that we're not of the selfie age when we start looking at Zoom hearings, so we're getting used to this. I've had some discussions with State's Attorney Wamstead on this, and I think Mr. Falk's concern for public trials is well grounded. My research, as well as Ms. Wamstead's, would support that if you're going to have a trial, whether it's civil or criminal, that it has to be a public trial that's offered for public participation, at least up to the capacity of the court. So I believe yesterday, or even this morning yet, Ms. Wamstead met with county officials to verify what we had made as a count in each one of our courtrooms and our jury assembly room. I've done up a trial protocol initially, and I've revised that a few times, but basically it's, if there's any room left over, then the public will be left in up to that number of that capacity at least. And we do have a pecking order as to who gets to be in that courtroom. Obviously law enforcement, defense personnel, and people supporting the defendant. What'll happen is we will do our voir dire in the jury assembly room, which holds, I'm guessing the old number was about 23. but that doesn't include the judge and the attorneys and the bailiffs and law enforcement and the clerk and the court reporter. So hopefully we're still at 23 after today's count by the county. If it's a felony, chances are we're not going to have a jury in that first count. So that means that after the first pool is voir dire, they'll be sent out of the courthouse until later in the afternoon. When they return in the afternoon, they'll go straight to courtroom 303, which is the only courtroom they'll be using for criminal jury trials. Civil jury trials won't start up until later in the year so that we can take care of the backlog and get through this virus issue at least somewhat. A second pool will be brought in at 1:30. Hopefully we get our jury out of that. And then the attorneys will go back up to courtroom 303 and make their picks of that jury, and people will be let go at that time. So our issues will be that maintenance is available to sanitize between those two groups. I'm expecting all these trials will be felonies, so therefore, depending on the level of the felony, it may even take more than two groups to do it. So we're only scheduling one jury trial a week. They start on Tuesday, hopefully finish by Thursday. Could run into Friday depending on all the evidence. But we're spreading it out. We have our protocol for the masks, gloves, face shields, whatever it may be. We'll have the first jury pool. There just won't be enough room in that jury assembly room for anybody else to be in there. But we'll have global meet access, which is the telephone access. People will be able to call in at least and listen to the voir dire. If there's room in the second one, they certainly could attend that one and still have the telephone open. The telephone will be open for all trials during the trial. If we get a high profile case or a case that's going to involve a lot of people, and there are a few in the works, it's possible that we will use a second courtroom like we did back in the investiture when I and Judge Romanek had our investiture, where we had television set up in my courtroom on 302, which is just across the hallway from 303. Those cases will probably come late in the summer or even in the fall, so we're not sure where that's still going to be at that time with spacing. But the entire issue is that the clerk is sending out their summons already to jurors to appear in July. On July 7th is the first jury trial. They will be asked 14 days prior to trial all the COVID questions, so that'll eliminate potentially some. They'll be asked that same group of questions when they come in on the day of jury trial. And of course, we're trying to plan for any other emergencies if somebody happens to be exposed during a trial, such as a juror. Obviously, we're going to have some issues with mistrials at that time, but that's the chance that we have to take. The seating in the courtroom in 303 is going to be even further restricted once the jury is seated, because we had to sit some of the jurors down on the floor out of the jury box in order to get the spacing. That means the people in that side of the gallery will have to be set back a little bit more. So for the most part, we don't get a lot of people from the public actually attending these. I assume we'll get some media in some of the cases, but they do have a spot in the back of the courtroom. We'll have law enforcement, victims, advocates, folks like that, but the seating is going to be fairly limited. I'm guessing there's only 11 or 12 seats in that courtroom that's spacing. And then the bench trials, whether it's criminal or civil, we don't usually get a lot of people coming in, but the right to a public trial applies to civil trials also. We're still doing a lot of our hearings by video and telephone. We're going to continue doing those as much as possible. The only juvenile trials that I anticipate having will be termination of parental rights, and we have a backlog of those. Ms. Wamstead can inform me of that later, but there's a backlog of those types of cases, so I expect we're going to have a few people in the courtroom and in each of the other courtrooms during that time trying those cases. That's basically the outline of what we have. I did issue another revised procedural order for that trial protocol and disseminated that to the county bar. So everybody should be getting that. As far as the attorneys, they should understand what their responsibilities are with their witnesses and the requirements while they're in the courtroom. They're fairly strict requirements as far as letting us know who's going to be at trial so that we can account for them at the door. There's requirements as to how they're going to conduct themselves in the courtroom so that we can keep them further than 6 feet apart. And as far as them approaching the bench, I've done something novel with that unless they can give me a short objection or whatever they want to say in court, they're going to have to use their email with me rather than approach me with sidebars. I don't know if anybody's even doing that, but that's probably what we're going to end up doing in the future too. But people can get public access to that. There'll be a notice posted on the courthouse door that said they can call the clerk's telephone number and ask for whatever the guest code is for that specific judge in that hearing. And then they'll be able to hear the trial itself. We can mute them so that they cannot interfere with the course of the proceedings, so that they can't interject or make obscene comments or anything else during the trial and disrupt it. Anybody have any questions of me? I know that's everything in a nutshell. We've talked about this a little bit before. The only difference is allowing the public in. And again, that's going to be a fluid situation as to what that number is. It'll depend on the trial. It'll depend on the stage of the trial. And it'll depend upon if we have any other issues with people that need to come in for security reasons. Some of these cases we require it's pretty high level law enforcement in them simply because of the underlying facts and some of the alliances that some of these people have that we bring in. I had a murder trial where we had so many plainclothes law enforcement that swept the courtroom every day, and everybody was vetted. Nobody got into that courtroom. So we have some of those coming up, and I'm assigned the case with Cody. That's going to get national attention. That's one of the cases that, as time goes through the summer, we're definitely probably going to have 2 courtrooms whenever Mr. Pendleton appears. Anybody have any questions for me or concerns that you have?
Commissioners, any questions for Judge Hager?
This is Dave. Thank you, Judge. I think you guys are really well prepared for this. It sounds like it's going to work.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit ahead of everybody in the state because they've been asking for what we've been doing. So hopefully we're the guinea pig, and we have the luxury, Mr. Engen, of having that jury assembly room that once the clerk's office combined and went to the smaller room. Most courthouses don't have that, even the new ones. So they're struggling. They're tearing out benches and all kinds of stuff down in Burleigh County just to get some room. So I think we can handle it. The only issue is it's going to take longer, but that's fine. We'll do what we have to do. I can report that, and Ms. Wamstead knows this, that she issued a lot of summons. I hear all the summons, people that were summoned from March through May. I hear them on Wednesday afternoons, a certain number each day. Their attendance is getting a little better. It started out a little rocky. So we're going to keep track of those numbers to see if that's an issue where we can have some relief on the correctional center population. I do know that the correctional center obviously had some testing issues recently with their officers. I think they had 4 officers who were sent home. One of the part-time guys was positive. And then I think they have 7 officers that are being quarantined themselves but are still working there. And they had 1 female who tested positive, or at least was suspect. So she's in quarantine. The issue with that is they only have 1 female pod. So the idea is, and she was in there for a long time, so the implication is that the officer is the person who potentially infected or exposed her. So she's in a holding cell right now for observation. Any other questions that I can answer?
Okay.
Maybe it does, because I think the current motion is that
Okay. You've all heard the request, assuming there's no other discussion or questions for Judge Hager. Ms. Wamstead, did you have any comments that you wanted to make?
No, thank you, Commissioner Knopf. I think Judge Hager summarized the plan moving forward very well. We would ultimately need a motion if the commission was open to this request to open the courthouse to the public for the limited purpose of jury and bench trials or other matters in which there is a right to a public trial that applies.
All right, thank you. So commissioners, you've heard the request. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Beach?
this is Cindy. I would move approval of that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Mr. Falk, were you going to second that?
Right, and I don't, excuse me, I'm not sure exactly how the motion is, but I would move to second it, that we allow the courthouse to be open for the limited purpose of jury trials, open to the public for the limited purpose of jury trials, and that the district court and the sheriff's office supervise that operation.
Okay,
And I would agree to that in the motion.
thank you.
And yeah, I think maybe Judge Hager's still on the line. Is that appropriate, Judge?
Well, I think you have to, Mr. Falk, go beyond jury trials because the right to a public trial applies to civil and criminal trials, whether it's bench or jury.
Sure, and that's fine, yeah. Public trials, that's fine. You know, and I'm optimistic we won't have a problem. As much as lawyers like to hear ourselves talk, the public so far hasn't really rushed to the courthouse to listen to us, so I don't think the numbers will be a problem.
If Madam Chair, if I may comment briefly.
Go ahead, Haley.
Okay, thank you. There may be some other matters beyond jury and bench trials in which the right to a public trial attaches some procedural hearings. And so I would just ask that the language of the motion be any jury or bench trials or other matters in which the right to a public trial applies.
And that would be fine with me, Haley.
I agree. I agree.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Judge Hager.
Thank you.
Okay, the next order of business then is Grand Skies Fire Response.
Good afternoon. This is Tom Sawyer with Grand Sky. Can you hear me all okay?
Yes,
Okay.
we can, Tom. Thank you.
Yep. I'm here with good news. The good news is that flight operations out at Grand Sky have picked up to the point that we need to improve our fire response capabilities, particularly in the area of aircraft fire response. And so I am here today to brief you on that need, brief you on our proposed solution to meet that need, and give you an overview of how we plan to solve this. And so when I come back to the commission in the future with requests to approve bid packages, you'll understand what it's all about and what we're trying to accomplish with it. So this is predominantly informational.
Thank you.
Debbie, I guess I'll just say go to the next slide then, huh?
Okay.
Okay, next one. Right now, Grand Sky's fire protection is supported by the Grand Forks Air Force Base and the city of Grand Forks. They support it through a mutual aid agreement. The Air Force by rule is not permitted to be the first responder, even though we're right there. However, the mutual aid agreement between the city and the county and the base allows the city to immediately notify the base, and the base ultimately is the first one there, but the city is responding at the same time. They have responded to a couple incidents out there in the past. And so none of what I'm proposing will change any of those relationships at all. Those relationships are very good, they're working, so we're not trying to change anything, but we are trying to add another layer of protection. Next slide, please. Oh, before we move on, what I'm proposing to do is the legislature approved $3 million of funds for Grand Sky in the last legislative session. That money has traditionally in the past been used for infrastructure, whether it's utilities or roads or concrete repair or operating infrastructure like the BVLOS system or security. We're proposing to use those funds to satisfy the fire needs at Grand Sky going forward, or at least to implement this new path. So the new path includes, moving to the fire truck slide now, we're working with both Grand Forks Air Force Base Fire Department and Grand Forks Fire Department to find used fire trucks that resemble largely what the two trucks are in the slide. One is an ARF truck, an aircraft rescue and firefighting truck. The other one is a structural pump and fire truck that would be used more for anything if a plane was on fire in a building. The ARF truck is specifically designed to get right in close to aircraft fires. The aircraft that are flying out there are growing in number. They are generally composite frame and burn hot and fast. There are some hazardous and toxic materials that come from those when they burn. And so we need an ARF truck to be able to deal with that. A good used ARF truck, we estimate with the necessary equipment, which is hoses and foam canisters and fire extinguishers that come along with it, to be about $500,000. New, they're $800,000 to $1 million. The structural pumper truck, we believe with equipment, including hoses and pump nozzles and things like that, that we can find for approximately $150,000, give or take. Next slide. We are also proposing to build a fire station, for lack of better words. It'll be a fire garage for the fire truck, storage for all the equipment. It'll be a support building as well, where we'll keep snow removal gear. We'll keep the site manager's trucks in that garage facility. Basically, it gives us an on-apron vehicle storage capability that we didn't have. So we are proposing to use that. You can see the spot where it was built. That will be lot 4. It'll be right on the airfield, but building that there will not preclude us from being able to use the rest of lot 4 for other tenants that may require it. We wouldn't be able to build a Northrop Grumman size building on it, but we'd be able to put a lot of different tenant uses in there. So we're not really giving up a lot of real estate, revenue generating real estate. We have several packages that we will go through. The first is a utilities package to bring utilities out to that lot. The second would be a package for the trucks. The third would probably be a package for the building itself. And so that's how we would propose to use it. The first package for the utilities is ready to go. And we think utilities and building will cost approximately $1.6 million or so. The next slide is the floor plan, the proposed floor plan for the fire station, firehouse, garage storage. It's got an office area, it's got restrooms, it's got a place for people to stay. It's got a large door in the back so that we could stick a chase plane in it if we had to. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. Next slide. I am also asking for the ability to commit $35,000 of those state funds to an effort in partnership with Grand Forks Air Force Base that the Air Force Base would manage to do a design charrette to ultimately explore putting a firehouse on the Air Force Base that would support Grand Sky and the Air Force Base together. We would contribute this equipment to it and to that effort, and the base would provide the staff when they get to the point where they can get the approval for that. They currently don't have that, but this would be one of the first steps in moving down that process. So I'm asking for some of those funds to pay up to half of the cost of the design and planning requirement for that need. Next slide. So the process would be that we would prepare packages like we have for any other work done at Grand Sky. We have worked with Ms. Wambeck about the how to procure used trucks. And so we are going through the process of identifying a variety of used trucks so we can come to the commission with a recommendation for a specific truck to buy. Then we will solicit county commission approval at that point for each truck that we want to buy. We'll solicit approval for the utility package to be built. We'll solicit approval for the construction bids when they come in for the building. All of that following the normal process for bid resolution that we've been using for these years. Last slide, last but not least, our growth at Grand Sky is what's driving these needs. General Atomics flies a number of aircraft, and they've been operating under waivers for their customers, which are mostly government customers. Northrop Grumman is bringing a large 4 aircraft up, I think as early as next week. And they're going to be providing support for government customers, and their contracts also require a faster ARF response time. If Northrop Grumman also starts doing maintenance work on Global Hawks, those Global Hawks will get towed over to Grand Sky, and we need to have an ARF truck in close proximity to satisfy the contract requirements. So all of this is aircraft driven, aircraft use driven for Grand Sky, which is all good news for us. That means that park is growing. That means that there are more people coming for General Atomics and Northrop Grumman to work in Grand Forks. Most of those companies now have approved corporate travel, so their teams are starting to head towards North Dakota to be able to perform work there. Investing in the trucks gives us a lot of additional support. This will not replace, nor will it be a permanent fire solution for us, but it is an augmented solution, and it does meet our contract requirements for aircraft fire support. So that's all real good. And finally, we're proposing that we would probably end up using somewhere roughly $2.2 million of the $3 million granted by the legislature to satisfy these needs. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. That was good news. So commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Sawyer?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I do have a couple of questions of Mr. Sawyer. You mentioned that the fire solution that you're looking at is not a permanent fire solution. What is a permanent fire solution?
Currently, the solution that we're working with is satisfactory, and that's with City of Grand Forks along with Grand Forks Air Force Base. Ultimately, this is predominantly put in place so that we can support aircraft needs, specifically around the apron area, and be able to put out a fire of a structure that an airplane caught on fire inside the structure, that we'd be able to do that. Right now, the staffing will be done by the personnel for the company that needs the support at the time they need it, so General Atomics or Northrop Grumman. We are working on getting our staff trained, but that's a longer term process, so we're working with the City of Grand Forks Fire to help us get improved on that. Ultimately, though, we would like to have a permanent fire presence. I don't think the size or operations of Grand Sky at this time necessitate that yet. But as we continue to grow, somewhere in the future, we're going to hit a tipping point that we're going to need a fire station permanently manned out there 24/7. So forgive me, I should have also said the design charrette for the $35,000 is so that we can explore doing that with Grand Forks Air Force Base, where they provide the trained personnel 24/7, and we invest in the equipment and the facilities to support that. They would go just down Alert Road from where we are, and they would be within the 4-minute response time that's needed. So that would be a great public-private partnership for us to work on. So that's what that $35,000 request is for.
Thank you. And my other question is, when you're looking at building projects, are you talking about in 2020 or in 2021?
Where we would plan to start that fire station facility as soon as possible.
Okay.
Actually, the utility plan is done. We're ready to bring that to the commission for approval.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, this is Tom Porter. Can I expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Fall, Commissioner Ing, and myself and Mr. Sawyer have now, I'd say for the last year, maybe year and a half, we have been in discussions with Grand Forks Air Force Base on that permanent solution. And the reason that that Mr. Sawyer is coming for you today with this is we're probably 7 years out in working with the Air Force for that permanent facility. And so as we have a window to invest these funds from the state. And so Mr. Sawyer with my support and the Commissioner Fall and Peter Hingan support agree that this is a wise investment for these funds while we continue the conversations with Grand Forks Air Force Base. But like I said, that's probably 7 years out before that comes to fruition.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Falk, did you have any
Madam
comments?
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, yeah, this is Commissioner Fall. I agree, we have to have a long-term solution there, and it's probably private-public partnership with the Air Force Base, and it looked more positive a few months ago than it does now. However, that's not to say it couldn't happen. And I have been in agreement on all of this. I do have concerns about the $35,000 on the charrette study. And before I would vote to sign off on that, I would like to hear from the Department of Commerce if they think that's an appropriate expenditure for us. Other than that, I'm fully supportive of it.
Thank you. Other commissioners, any comments, questions? Okay, hearing none. So, Mr. Sawyer, for today, this was informational purposes only. We didn't need to take any action on the $35,000 request. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I'll be happy to take the action item to find out from the Department of Commerce if they believe that this is an appropriate expenditure use of the funds. And I understand why it might not be in, from Commissioner Falk's point of view. Traditionally, we have not used that money for design purposes. We have only used state appropriations for actual construction or purchases. And so this might be a slight deviation from that. So I will double check that. But to your broader question, I was hoping to get some level of kind of consent or agreement that this was an agreeable path forward, and we'll start bringing the packages forward for the trucks and for the building and for the utilities.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And I think that the full commission is in agreement to move forward with that. And we'll just wait to hear back from you at another time.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Okay, the
Nice to
next
see all of you
item
too.
that we have is North Dakota Department of Transportation. Are you on the line?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes, you are. You want to identify yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Brad Darr. I'm with the North Dakota Department of Transportation and their state maintenance engineer. I requested to be on, ma'am?
I said thank you and welcome.
Okay. I requested to be on your agenda today to discuss the state's limited 129,000 pound large truck network and get your thoughts for our director and our advisory committee's consideration. A bill was passed during the 2017 legislative session requiring the DOT to permit up to 129,000 pounds on a specific network of roads and establish a process to add segments. That permit is $20 for a single trip, $100 a month, or $700 a year. The department established a request mechanism for commercial entities and for individuals who reside in the state to request add additions to the system. That process includes an advisory committee to provide input to the department and actions taken to adjust the system. It also requires public involvement, and we've chosen to go to city and county commissions for that public involvement. The system of roadways must keep all their axles legal as they are today, and they must follow the federal bridge formula and any length limitations in effect. The reason I'm here today is a request from the North Dakota Mill and Elevator. The North Dakota Mill and Elevator's request is for US 81 from the intersection of US 2 and 81 north to the exit ramp on I-29, or the I-29 interchange, where trucks would be able to access the plant from both directions with more commodities. The designated routes that are being requested for addition to the system currently have a gross vehicle weight of 105,500 pounds, which is the legal weight for our state highway system, and are restricted to legal weights in the spring. There are no bridge issues on the system that they're requesting. That concludes my update, and I guess I've been before you one other time on some roads for some sugar beets, but I'm willing to answer any questions and take any input you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Nick West, are you on the phone?
I am, yes.
Do you have any comments?
Nothing of real substantial here. The way I look at this is a state road, state jurisdiction, and ultimately, therefore, I guess in my opinion, the county doesn't have, that's not a county road. But generally speaking, I do think the 129,000 pound initiative is good, as long as the road geometrics can support it and the structures can support it. It's a good thing. Just for the board to keep in mind that as these initiatives get more common, that we will probably see them someday on a county road that we'll have to say no to an industry due to bridge issues. But overall, it's a good item, and the highway department would support the request.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? So basically, for our purposes today, this was informational, is that correct?
It's informational, and I'm willing to take any comments you have back to our advisory committee.
Okay, and I think the comments that Nick had presented, will that be adequate?
That will suffice, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dar, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you take care.
Yep, bye.
Next item then is Valley Law Enforcement Memorial. And who do we have to speak? Who do we have to speak on that?
Mr. Chair, this is Danny Weigel from the Grand Forks City Council.
Hi, Danny.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk to you guys a little bit about a project that is near and dear to a lot of different people. We've had a committee working very hard on this, including Commissioner Rost as well. And he's really spearheaded a lot of this and brought a lot of ideas and concepts to us, and should really be thanked for all of his hard work. As a committee, we met this morning and went over some more planning options, as well as where we are sitting financially. The reason I'm here today is to discuss an opportunity that we were requesting $10,000 from the Grand Forks County Commission for a donor plaque and monument. I have spoke with some other colleagues in the Grand Forks City Council, and they're very interested in helping support this project moving forward financially as well. So, like I said, we're here to ask today for $10,000, and that'll go towards the donor plaque and monument for this law enforcement memorial.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or questions, Mr. Weigel? Hearing none, you've heard the request. Would anyone like to make a motion?
This is Dave Ingen. Is this a budget matter we have to take up first, Debbie, or are we in a position to make this kind of a donation to this?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Ingen,
It is not something that was budgeted for. It would have to be taken from the general fund, which would be allowed by law to do that. But it was not something that was budgeted for.
We're just starting a budgeting process, so I guess it's hard to know where we're gonna sit here in several weeks, isn't it?
There are a lot of.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Falk. It seems to me that if we did this, we'd have to take it out of this year's budget somehow. I don't see next year that money being available. I'm just looking at some significant issues that are coming up, and I've just been addressing some of them here in the past week on the correctional center and the prisoner that we're holding. So I'm not sure that we're going to find the money in a budget a year from now. The question I have is, can we find it this year?
If we can find it this year, I'd like to support it, but if we can find it now, maybe that's the way to do it.
So it would come from the cash carry forward. It would just be $10,000 less that we would have available for next year's budget. That's where it would come from.
So in essence, it does impact next year's budget somewhat.
Yes.
This is Commissioner Ross. The reason we're coming to the commission is the fact that it was a few weeks ago that the Veterans Memorial was here and asked for a donation. And I just felt that we probably have a very important mission too by doing this memorial, and that we would come before the commission also to ask for a donation as did the Veterans Memorial.
I agree with you, Commissioner Ross. However, you have to agree also that our finances have changed significantly since that request.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
what did we fund to the Veterans Memorial? I can't remember.
That was $10,000.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
For the sake of discussion, I'll make a motion that we fund the Veterans Memorial for $10,000 out of this year's budget.
The Veterans Memorial or the law enforcement memorial?
Law enforcement, excuse me. Law enforcement. I'll blame Commissioner Ross for distracting me. Thank you.
I'll second the motion, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second then to support $10,000 donation then to the Valley Law Enforcement Memorial. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your time, and as well as all the commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Weigel. Take care.
Just a moment.
Yes.
Mr. Weigel,
Yes, ma'am.
do you know, I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse, but not only I think is it important for us as a community to look at a memorial for law enforcement, I think it's important for us as a community to really look at the uniforms that our law enforcement officers are wearing and make sure that we have adequate protection for them. I'll just use Fargo as an example. In Fargo, of course, the officers did not have access to helmets. And I think they did some funding locally to try to come up with those funds. And I hope that we're able to do that as well so that we can equip our law enforcement officers better when they're out on the streets, because we never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. I know many members of the Grand Forks PD. I believe they have a helmet assigned to each individual squad car that they have, as well as a heavier type of body armor. I know that's become standard practice for many law enforcement agencies around the country to have that in case of certain situations. Not quite sure what Sheriff Schneider and his team have over there, but I think that's something, like you said, is very important to make sure that our officers have the adequate tools to do their job and protect themselves in times of need.
I'm, you know, very, very cognizant of that fact and really want to do a good job when we're sending out our law enforcement officers. I just think it's so important that if we equip them appropriately, not knowing what's behind a door or what's happening anytime they take a call, but at least they could, so that they could be well protected in going out for safety purposes.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peach. Thank you, Mr. Weigel. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is public health.
Madam Chair, it's Dean Dahl.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dean Dahl.
Yeah.
Sorry. It was just right here on my document.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'm here to request funds to pay an intern. I think $4,000 would probably cover the amount of time that we would have the intern help set up and configure some of our new equipment that's been coming in. And I did not budget for this.
Mr. Dahl, could you explain a little bit about the equipment that you're talking about that you would have this intern working on, laptops or whatever that you just got in?
Yeah, the laptops, we've got quite a few laptops that can be set up for the different departments that are COVID related because of the employees having to work off site. And we're trying to prepare for if there's a second run of this COVID virus thing in the fall.
Yeah.
They're gonna need that equipment, correct?
Right, we'll, you know, it'll be
You're inundated right now.
we won't be trying to drag desktops around.
Okay, any other questions from commissioners for Mr. Dahl?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question, either of Ms. Nelson or if Carrie is online. Would this be a possibility of getting some funding because it's a COVID related expense?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I don't know the answer if it would be a qualified expense or we could try to request reimbursement, but I'm not sure that we'll receive reimbursement.
Madam Chair, Tom Ford.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Ford.
I don't think it would qualify for reimbursement from COVID. What I would highly suggest, if it's the route we want to go, that Ms. Gels send up a message through the state EOC contact just to make sure. But I did have this discussion with Mr. Falk, and I don't think it would be a reimbursable expense, but it doesn't hurt to check on it before the board makes a decision.
Thank you.
I guess I could take funds out of some of my equipment and try to push some of those equipment purchases back till next year, if there's no place that we can get the funds from.
So how will that affect next year then? The budgets?
Madam Chair, this is Tom Ford again. If Mr. Dahl wouldn't mind, if he would be able to maybe just shoot me an email of why he needs the intern and the type of work the intern will be doing, I could actually shoot it over to, there's a gal in the Office of Management and Budget I am working with right now on our application for reimbursement, and I could just pitch that to her. And if she can't answer it, she could probably get it answered for me rather quickly.
Okay.
Would that work for you, Mr. Dahl?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Falk here. My only concern about this is the summer internship. So by the time we start shooting out letters and then come back to another meeting here, the summer is going to be about halfway gone.
Okay.
And I talked to Mr. Dahl about this, and I was supportive of this, of course, not realizing we were just going to spend $10,000 5 minutes before he appeared. And all of this is very concerning to me. I guess what I would suggest is that we consider a motion. He's asking for $4,000, that we consider a motion where we contribute $2,000 from cash carry forward, and that Dean find the other two in his equipment savings, and that we then could file or look into whether we could recover any of this from COVID, but at least we could move forward at this point.
Okay, so was that a motion? I'm sorry.
Sure, I'll make it a motion that people can.
Do we have a second?
I will second that
Okay,
motion,
we have a
Madam.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? Does that work for you, Mr. Dahl?
That works for me, yes.
Okay. Hearing no questions or discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried then for $2,000 to come out of the cash carryover, and then you will find $2,000 in your budget for the insurance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item then is public health. Who do we have with us today?
Good afternoon, members of the commission, Madam Chair. This is Debbie Swanson from Grand Forks Public Health Department. Just checking to make sure you can hear me and see me.
We can.
I don't have a written report today, but I did submit an addendum document that was provided to the Grand Forks City Council last evening. But first, I'd like to just give you a few highlights about what's happening with COVID in Grand Forks County. In lieu of not having a PowerPoint for this, I'll just be really brief on the data. But our cases are standing at 346 with 3,112 total tests that have been completed. So currently there are 328 people that are recovered, and we've had 4 deaths. So you can tell from the map there's a very small number of active cases in our county right now. We just continue to see about 0 to 2 cases most days for the past few weeks. You probably get those daily updates from a few different sources. And most of those have been in congregate settings, either in the correctional facility, long-term care, and a few others. Diagnostic testing, contact tracing, and quarantine and isolation still remain our best tools for mitigating the disease, and then of course social distancing and masks for prevention. And you're taking a lot of great proactive approaches there, and I'm really pleased to see all of that. We do believe that the increased number of large activities and travel might lead to some additional cases, and so we will be continuing to test throughout the summer, of course. And also because we know that there's about a 40% transmission rate, or there's about 40% of cases that can transmit the virus that are completely asymptomatic or they haven't developed symptoms yet. And that's been proven by the CDC. It's possible that our outdoor activities in the summertime will help to prevent the spread, similar to what we see with influenza all the time. We tend to see cases go up in the wintertime when people are indoors and crowded and transmitting influenza virus. We're not sure that coronavirus is going to act the same way, but it might possibly. As of May 29th, the North Dakota is in what's called the green level, which is low risk for restart activities. And this is looking at the data from all over the state, but it's not fully open. Blue would be fully open, so we still need to follow those guidelines for the green level in the North Dakota restart guidance, which you've already been incorporating into your restart plans, as well as the courts, which you heard today. And public health will also be following along with that. There's been a lot of development in the vaccine front, with many manufacturers taking on some economic risk to develop a vaccine. We've never seen anything quite like this in terms of the numbers of manufacturers investing, but it's likely because not all vaccines will make it to market because of safety concerns or manufacturing capability. So having several in the pipeline ensures that we will have one or several available. And it's looking right now that it would be very late 2020, if at all, in this year, or early 2021. Those are some pretty optimistic projections. We'll be planning for flu vaccine administration in a manner that adheres to social distancing as much as possible and masks. And also we'll start to see some drive-through events. And this will really help us to practice what we believe we will need to put in place when we start start vaccinating for COVID-19. Our focus though right now remains on viral diagnostic testing, and the capacity has increased at the North Dakota Department of Health Laboratories. So we anticipate some changes that you'll see in terms of requirements as to who can be tested. We've been anxiously waiting to be able to test close contacts of our cases rather than simply quarantining them for 14 days. They still will have to have some quarantine period because they might potentially still develop symptoms, but it will help us to determine if contacts become cases and further expand our contact tracing. And we're meeting with various healthcare partners on Thursday to develop what we're calling a static testing strategy. It's really already been in place with Altru and Northwood Deaconess and Spectra Health, where they are testing in a location or through their clinics on an ongoing basis. And we feel that that's expanding that as a more sustainable option than for public health to be standing up large-scale testing events. As you know, the Grand Forks County Correctional Center completed a round of testing. Our nurses did that, and we augmented that with some support from our staff at Grand Forks Public Health. And based on those results, that there will be a second round of testing later this week. I believe it's scheduled for Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, or maybe all 3 days. And then on the good news, Altru has loosened some visitor restrictions, and information is available on their website. And then long-term care facilities are also opening up visitation with some precautions, and that's been really pleasing to see. So the document that you have before you is probably what you're most interested in, because this relates to the funding that we have received from the North Dakota Department of Health, which is specifically assigned to public health departments across the state. They had $20 million that they allocated, and we received an allocation of $1,056,645. I brought it forward to the Grand Forks City Council because they are our administrative entity for things like our budgets, and brought it forward to them, and there was strong interest in knowing what categories we would be placing our efforts in. So I further categorized it out beyond the typical spending line items to those programs or services that it would support, and you can there see our diagnostic testing, contact tracing, vaccination programs, data and communications. And then of course we have to reimburse areas where we had expenses where they were allowed in the short term, but not in the long term. We had a lot of grants where we had personnel working in grants, and they dropped what they were doing and helped us with COVID response, but it wasn't an allowable expense in the grant. So we have to pay back those areas, as well as some overtime that has been incurred, and that's from March 1st through June 30th. And we're just now in the process of kind of sorting through all of that. It's always a moving target because we have also, as you know, requested FEMA funding, both on the city side and on the county side, county including our jail nurses. So if funding comes in from FEMA, that will help to close that gap as well, back to the areas where it was spent. So that totals up $1,056,645. It's an ambitious plan. Our funding is only through December 30th. And we anticipate that we will have to add a number of additional staff who will have to get up to speed very quickly. And they will also be working very hard in the next several months as we roll out some of these additional initiatives. And we're also hoping to give all of our staff a bit of a break. Everybody's been working really hard, and haven't had much time off, have a lot of overtime, and we need to ensure that everybody is healthy and ready to hit the ground running this fall when we get busy with other activities. So I just wanted to offer that up as an additional document. I will be reiterating, obviously, with the city council that as a health department that shares the resources of the city and the county, we need to ensure that any initiatives that we have are offered to all residents of Grand Forks County, and that we work with our partners in the county to ensure that we cover everybody. So at this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Swanson?
This is Dave Engen.
Mr. Engen?
Debbie, did you have trouble finding people to do contract tracing for you, or how is that working? And are they working long hours, and how's it going?
Initially, we had 15 staff from Grand Forks Public Health Department that were all doing contact tracing when our numbers increased significantly in April, and we've been able to reduce that down to a smaller number, obviously. We also have received significant support from the UND MPH program. Those students have been employed by the North Dakota Department of Health to help us with contact tracing, and they have their own case manager there. And they are now, those students will be going back to school this fall and may not be quite as available to us, but they've all had the training, and I believe they will commit to some part-time work going forward. But we need to recognize that we have a lot of public health programs that have been neglected during this time frame, and we probably need to ensure that we continue to give attention where it's needed, as well as all the COVID response activities at the same time. So hopefully with an MPH program here, we'll be able to maybe even hire some of the recent graduates or others who are seeking employment right now.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Swanson? So this $1,056,000, that's all CARES money?
Madam Chair, that's correct. That is all federal funding, so we have to follow all the guidance from the CARES program funding that's been provided to the state of North Dakota. So we've had a couple of requests already, and we've had to research those and ensure that they were in alignment with this. We've also had a request to align our strategies with those of the Mayor's Economic Recovery Committee, and that process is just beginning right now. And we'll make sure that any efforts there are closely aligned with public health efforts and evidence-based strategies and coverage of all residents of Grand Forks County and everything that we do.
So this can go, you're checking to see if this money can be utilized for economic purposes versus the medical?
I don't believe that we can use any of our funding for economic purposes. It would have to be utilized for testing that has a public health benefit to the entire population.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. So any other questions? And these people would be employed through the end of this year? Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct. Our funding is only available to us through December 30th. Not December 31st, it sunsets that day, so through December 30th. So it is a challenge to us to ramp up, hire, put people, on board in such a short period of time. But fortunately, we've developed a lot of expertise and people that are willing to mentor them to learn these roles.
Great, bless their heart. So, okay, any other questions from the commission? So this was basically informational for us today, is that correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
All right. Thank you so much again for the information shared and for all that you and your staff do. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next is emergency manager. Ari, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am, I certainly am. I have a pretty brief report today, and then we can move on to River City Speedway.
Thank you.
Mine is pretty short. I don't know if you all remember, but a few months ago, we talked about having to renew our hazard mitigation plan. It's something that has to be done every 5 years. Every county in the country has to do one in order to be eligible for hazard mitigation funds. Our plan is currently in the final review phase. We did get a grant, a hazard mitigation grant to do this plan. It was an 80-20 cost share. What we did was through our community meetings and then a state community coffee last fall, we were able to meet our in-kind donation. So there will be no cost to the county for this plan renewal. We met it with the time and the hours that people put into helping us get this plan done. We had great participation from the community. Our meetings were full, and we had a lot of great ideas that came forward. So it is in final review. It's already been checked with the Department of Emergency Services to make sure that we had crossed all of our T's and dotted our I's, and then it will be submitted to FEMA for final approval. That's really the big thing that we're working on right now, is trying to get that plan through, because there are no jurisdictions in the county that can apply for hazard mitigation funds if we don't have an approved plan. And so we're really trying to expedite this and get it done. We were waylaid a little bit by COVID. We weren't able to do our final community meeting, which is why we had to reach back to the state and see if we could utilize their community coffee to help us meet our goals for that grant. And then I think that's all I have, Madam Chair. So if you want to move on to River Cities, I believe they're on the line.
Okay, thank you, Kari, for all that you do. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
ma'am.
Yes, take care. River Cities, are you with us today?
We are, thank you, Dan, Brad, and Darren.
Okay, welcome. So what do you have for us today?
Oh. We sent my sigh for today. We sent we wish for consideration for the month of June to be at a third capacity in the grandstand, which is 2,000. And then in July, be at 50%, which would be 31,000. 3,100, excuse me. Too many zeros, 3,100, excuse me, for July. With moving forward, looking into August, if things continue to go well, which we most briefly heard with active cases in Grand Forks and such, that the hope in August would be that we would be back to fully operating, I guess. So 2,000 for the rest of June, 3,100 for July, and then looking for, our full opening for August, I guess. And at the end of the day, that's what we're asking for.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, do you have
Thank
questions?
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Ross. I was out at the racetrack Friday night. I spent all evening out there looking to see how they handled everything. And there was a lot of separation. There was just a little bit of clusters with families and things like that. But they're handling themselves during this COVID emergency in a very professional manner. All the beer stands, all the concession stand workers, they all had masks on. And so I would guess at this time, I would like to make a motion that we allow them to go up to 2,000 for the month of June, and to reconsider the 3,100 by July.
Okay,
I would second that motion.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions?
Yeah, this is Dave Engen.
Yes, Dave?
I love how our numbers are going in Grand Forks, and you guys have a good plan. So if you keep after your plan and gradually look at it like this, we hope we can go along with whatever you need. But I like the idea of doing it at 2,000 now until July 7th, with the hope that we'll have no issues going forward from there. So,
Thank you, Ari, this is Darren. I think initially when we started this conversation some time ago, Kari used the word fluid or, changing, looking forward thinking, and, that's what we're trying to do here with your help is to incrementally make those moves to still be responsible and keep doing our thing and keep communicating back to you folks when you have questions for us. So I appreciate the comments from commissioners.
Okay, any other questions from any other commissioners?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Falk, I continue to think that large crowds are an inherent danger with this virus. And I don't believe it's in the best interest of the community as a whole to increase the size of the crowds at the racetrack right now, which I know is disappointing. But I've heard from citizens that, ask me, is this in the best interest of our city as a whole, not just the racetrack? And that really is concerning to me, and I'm not certain that it is, that if we somehow started up another series of cases of this virus, and we end up with businesses closing down again and whatever, that concerns me. And I look around the country right now, and where they're opening up, states are starting to have big problems again. I look to the professional sports, baseball, hockey, golf, basketball. All of them are thinking about opening up, but with no fans. And they have massive arenas. But they are concerned about the potential for an outbreak. So those are just my concerns. I'm not going to be able to support the motion at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
and this is Dave Engen again. The problem with the local racing is you don't have big TV contracts like the NBA and everybody else. So we'd like to, I would like to support you in going forward, but please pay great attention to your plan, because you wrote a good plan with Kari and Debbie, and you stick to it. Maybe this will work without any issues. If there are issues, we'll have to readdress it, I guess, but I can see why you have to have a few more than the NASCAR people do, because they had 1,000 people at a NASCAR race, and it looked like there was just nobody there. But you don't have that TV around. We understand that. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I do. I wrote some thoughts before I came today, and so I'm just going to read those to you, if I might. But my thoughts is that before our economy can fully recover, people have to feel safe and they have to be safe. Feedback I get from numerous people in our community reinforces that people are not yet feeling safe in our community, and people are sharing their appreciation for the position, I guess, that we have taken as it relates to the focus on health and safety in our community. Every activity that involves interacting with other people comes with a degree of risk, and we need to always be mindful that this pandemic is unprecedented and it's ongoing. And we read every day, like Mr. Falk said, where the virus is occurring or reoccurring in states that thought had peaked. So we need to remember a vast majority of our citizens still have not been exposed to this virus. We still need to be diligent in following the guidelines that we've been provided by our governor and by CDC, and we currently are within those guidelines. CDC last week released new guidelines for events and gatherings, and the guidelines stated the closer you interact with others increases the spread. The longer you interact with others and more people that are involved, the higher the risk. And it went on to say that you can argue indoor or outdoor for CDC guidelines or guidance on attending large events. They have purposely not been tied to any particular type of gathering, meaning indoor or outdoor. The same guidelines apply to all gatherings, and they're applicable to any type of event that may occur. CDC surveys showed that social distancing was supported by 87% of the people surveyed and limiting large gatherings at 82%. 84% surveyed said their state's actions struck a right balance or were not restrictive enough. And 77% of those surveyed reported to be adhering to the CDC guidelines. The virus has slowed down in some places and it's popping up again in others, and we can see that even in the stats here in North Dakota. It isn't necessarily that our numbers are going up, but they're moving around and they're starting out in the west again, just like they started out initially. If someone thinks that they are not vulnerable to getting the disease, they are fooling themselves. And we need to keep in mind we're still in the first wave. I recognize the stress, the frustration, being anxious, being more reactive. Those are natural feelings in the wake of this pandemic. With the state opening up, somehow people seem to think, and I think we've all seen it, that we're over the virus here in North Dakota and they want to get back to normal, and we can't blame them. We all want to be in that same position. So they're letting down their guard and they're going back to their lives as before the pandemic hit. And we aren't going to see normal for months to come. And my thoughts are is when you let down our guard is when things start to get real dangerous, and it's not something where I want to go. North Dakota is in good shape at this moment, but that's because we've followed the guidelines that have been provided to us. The recipe for personal safety has not changed and is not changing even as society opens up. We still need to have restrictions. Regardless of where anyone stands, following public health measures and CDC guidelines, the safety measures that we take play a key role in determining the severity of this pandemic in our own community and in our own state going forward. I agree that it's time to get people out in the workplace and public spaces, but we have to do that with common sense and with the utmost care. And again, I'm going to go back to CDC guidelines, the governor's guidelines as far as numbers, and putting the safety, I guess, of my entire community first. So that's my comments. So anyone else have a comment they'd like to make? Hearing none, we have a motion then on the floor to raise the attendance level to 2,000 people for the month of June. Was that 3,100 for the month of July?
To be reviewed to see if we go up to 31.
Okay, all right. So consideration for 2,000 people for the full or for the rest of the month of June, and then we'll reconsider 3,100. I was trying to figure out where we are in the month and when we meet again. For 2 weeks, we're almost going to be in July. So, but to be reviewed again for July. So, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Aye.
No.
So we have two. David, did you vote?
He's muted.
Sorry, folks, I was mute.
Okay, so,
I voted aye. I voted
which
aye.
way did you vote, sir? For or?
Aye.
Ayes?
I
Okay.
voted for the motion.
Okay, so the motion carries then where River Cities can raise their attendance level to 2,000 attendees for the rest of June, and then we will review that again sometime in the very
July
I think
7th.
July 7th.
July
is our
7th is the
So
next
is
meeting.
it 2000 until you reconsider July 7th?
That's the way I understand it. Okay, so July 7th is the next meeting. Are you able, Darren and Brad, to be here for that meeting?
Of course.
Yes, we will.
Okay, put it on your schedule. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so the next item then is finance and tax.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the election is final. I had scanned in on Friday the unofficial totals because they were not official until Monday when the canvassing board met. So I did email you the official results. There were an additional 54 ballots that were counted, but those are the final numbers with 14,188 ballots cast.
And nothing changed.
Nothing changed. No races changed. So that was all I wanted to say.
Any questions, Ms. Nelson?
I would just like to say that Debbie, you did a great job during this endeavor, this mail-in ballot. I don't know how you did it, but I really appreciate what you did and how you handled it, so.
Thank you.
And I think we all agree with that, so thank you. Okay, the next item then is Director of Administration, Mr. Ford.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. I have some really, really good news for the board. It says ICS change orders, but I don't have any. So that's good news. And I'm not going to make any promises, but after talking with Mr. Krzyzewski, we're not anticipating any in the near future. So knock on wood. I'll move on though to the county recovery plan. I owe the commission an update on where the recovery team is at on that. Debbie's got the document and that was sent for your review over the weekend. So today's purpose is not to ask the board for any action to be taken. This is just a briefing and hoping for a discussion and some direction from the board once I'm done with my report. You'll see through that report that the recovery team is recommending a phased approach with some pretty conservative measures into how we phase it out. Currently, we are in phase 1, and which is closed to the public, and it does not apply to department heads or essential personnel. However, that being said, there are some departments who would like to start bringing their staff back soon, and the recovery team did set a date for a soft date for September 1 as a goal to move on into tier 2. But I know hearing from some department managers, department heads, they need to start bringing some staff back sooner than that. And what I've been just communicating is that they have been granted the ability as department heads to bring back their essential personnel. And so they do have that prerogative to do so. So I think I just wanted to give you that update and just looking for any direction, any feedback. Do you think the recovery team's going in the right direction? Would you like to see us go in another direction? Do you have any questions?
Any questions of Mr. Ford? I guess I have a question with some of the things that we are looking to implement for safety purposes, both for staff and for our community, individuals that utilize our buildings. When are some of those actions going to start taking place? I mean, like with the plexiglass and things like that, it's all, each department's ordering. Okay, so that's, okay, I wasn't clear on that, how we were doing that and when, and how soon. So.
Madam Chair, I didn't hear the whole question. It kind of cut out. And what I'll do is in a minute, I'll move on to a preview on a meeting I had with ICON today. But Icon did provide us some resources for ordering, like the plexiglass, the sneeze guards for some departments who are in, for example, the tier 1 category, who would begin to reopen if they deem it acceptable by September 1. I sent those resources out to all the department managers that they could take a look at what they think is appropriate for their areas. And just, we'll talk about this in the department head meeting tomorrow, but a reminder that they need to save those costs, those are invoices, so that we can submit them for reimbursement.
Okay, thank you. That covered my question.
Okay, okay, wonderful.
Anything else for Mr. Ford or questions? Again, thank the team and yourself for all that you're doing. It's a lot of work that's involved with that, and we appreciate all your efforts on that. Okay, the next.
We appreciate that. It's on its 4th draft because we're continually wanting to get feedback from all the departments, and we appreciate it. So, and if I can then provide you a quick update, I at the board's request, myself along with Mr. Grzeszewski met with folks from Icon this morning to discuss the safety concerns and the risk management concerns that have been expressed by department heads. And we had a good meeting, and we went through some pretty good options. And Madam Chair, I won't get into the details of some of those options just for the safety and discretion of our employees. But I'm happy to have that discussion with any commissioner offline if you'd like to know the details. But I think Icons has what it needs from us, and they are going to be drawing up some options along with pricing. And then once I have that, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Ford.
Yes, ma'am. That's all I have.
All right, State's Attorney, did you have anything for us, Ms. Wamstead?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I do not have anything.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Committee reports. Commissioner Rost.
Nothing, Madam Chair.
Nothing. Okay. Commissioner Peach.
Madam Chair, just as we move forward, Administrative Services Committee, I'll visit with Debbie and see when she and her staff are ready to continue on with our budget meetings. I'm assuming probably before the next meeting, we may have some meetings scheduled so we can continue to move on with the budgeting process for 2021. Other than that, I have nothing else to report.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Engen?
Yeah, I attended the Zoom EDC meeting, and they're still doing projects, financing things going on, and the meeting by Zoom working very well. In addition to that, the only thing I've been involved in is a number of phone calls with Commissioner Falk and Sheriff and others concerning some corrections issues. And that's really all I've been up to for just staying out of trouble.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Commissioner Falk?
Yeah, I have nothing other than what's already been mentioned. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I have copies of some minutes, one being the Fair Board. We just met this, I guess, last week. And also Emergency Management, we met yesterday. And so, as did the Canvassing Board, and Debbie spoke to you about that, and that worked wonderfully well. And again, want to congratulate Deb and her staff on a very successful election this year. As far as anything else, I have a library board meeting tomorrow, and then we have Deb sent out a special meeting notice today for next Tuesday for all of us, I believe. Board of Equalization will be meeting. And aside from that, I don't think that I have anything else to share. So, okay, so unfinished business. Did we have anything? We didn't, did we? Okay, and we didn't have any correspondence. So with that, I would entertain a motion.
I so move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Take care, stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.